We love to come here. I'm telling you, Jody and I, we haven't been back. We were here in 2019, and then a couple things prevented us from coming back. Don't even want to recall those things. One of them was a pandemic. Can we just say forget about that for a minute? Man, I mean, we wanted to get back. We couldn't. And then the other was, just the volcano. And so the volcano, last time I was here in 2019, Al had us go up, and Jody and I, we hiked up to the volcano. And how many people have hiked up there? I mean, we hiked up, and then we're looking, and it's smoldering, and Jody looks at our guide and asks him, he says, well, is this thing okay? Is it safe? And oh, yeah, it's fine. And I think Al wanted to push me in. I think that's what was happening. But seriously, you've been through so much, and it's a pleasure for us to be able to come out here and to be with you. And the worship, come on, out of the house. And that worship, I'm telling you, I was getting nervous over here for Paul. He was jumping up and down so much. I thought to myself, I want to worship like that, but I'm 6'5", and he's, I don't know how tall. I'm like, I'm going to hit the ceiling right here, and then I'm not going to be able to get up and speak to y'all. So I was just like, I got to just I had to tone it down. And nobody else was toning it down, including Pastor Al. But seriously, we're grateful to be here and be back because, and I mean this, we love you. We love each of you. Your heart for the Lord, your heart for others, your heart for this work. Do you realize God's doing something special here? Something special. And now that we've partnered together as High Point Church, it is something special that he's doing something here. And I want to just say, I love your pastor. Your pastor is a good friend. We've walked through a lot. Pastor Al has been a great friend to me. I love him because of his love for the Lord. I love him because of his love for the Bible, and he preaches every week. I love him for his love for his family and his spouse and this church. And then I got to just be honest. Lastly, I got to say, I love Debbie. Anybody else love Debbie? Because she's got to put up with Al, you know what I mean? And that's a full-time job, putting up with him. And but in all seriousness, we're grateful to be here. So let me just ask you this question as we get started. Who knows what the shortest novel is? Anyone? Shortest novel. No takers on this one right now. You're like, I don't know. It's by Ernest Hemingway. And it's only got 6 words. Can you believe this? 6 words. Now, I got to warn you. I'm going to read the whole thing to you in a moment. But it's a bit alarming. It's a bit disturbing just because of what it's about. And it's about a stillborn baby. And so he writes, for sale, baby shoes, never worn. I mean, let that sink in for a moment. So if you're a writer, and it hits all the things, it grabs your attention, it's unsettling to the heart, it's a story in 6 words. Do you know what the longest novel is? Still no takers. The longest, well, I'm hearing something. I hear some things over here. What was the guess? Oh, the Lord of the Rings. You know what? That could be close. But according to the Guinness Book of World Records, I'm just going to go with the Guinness Book of World Records. And it was written by a guy named Marcel Proust. And it's called The Remembrance of Things Past. Catch this, shortest novel, 6 words. This one, 1.5 million words. It's about his life in France and his travels. It's got like 8 volumes. I can guarantee you this, I ain't reading that thing. Anybody with me? I don't care about that little Frenchman. You know what I'm saying? I'm an Italian guy, and I don't care about what's going on with him. And do you know what the average novel is? The average novel has 8 to 12 chapters. And it's about 2,000 to 3,000 words per chapter. And so that's what the average is. Okay, said all that to simply say this. How long is your novel? How long is your story? More specifically, how long is a resurrection story? How many chapters? We just got done celebrating Easter. Can I get an amen? It's 100% Sunday in the house. Do you know that the resurrection power that was available to them is available to us? And the same power that rose Jesus from the grave can raise us to new life? That's why we're here. And so everybody's got a story. I want to talk to you about the common uniqueness of all of our stories, because I believe that we who have a resurrection story have the same chapters in it. And so I'm going to share 5 chapters in every resurrection story. So go ahead and open up your Bibles to John chapter 21. And we're going to look at a story of Jesus, the resurrected Jesus, the post-resurrected Jesus, and 7 men. And so it's in John chapter 21. And I want to give you what I'm calling 5 chapters of every resurrection story. It's true in my story. It's true in Pastor Al's story. It's true in the pastor, the senior pastor, right here. Yes, pastor. He is the pastor. Al's just junior. Well, no, he's junior. Hold on. This is getting confusing. But in all seriousness, it's true for his story. It's true for my story. And I want it to be true for your story. But I don't know, because I don't know all of you. But I know it can be true, because it's true here. So let me go ahead and read from John chapter 21. I'm going to start in verse 1. It says, "After this, Jesus revealed himself again to the disciples by the Sea of Tiberias." And so that's important, because it's showing us that this is post-resurrection appearance of Jesus. That's what we're looking at. Look at verse 2. This is who was with him. Simon Peter, Thomas called the twin, Nathanael of Cana in Galilee, the sons of Zebedee, it's James and John, 2 others who we don't know. And then it says, Simon Peter said to him, "Hey, I'm going fishing." And they said to him, "Well, we'll go with you." They went out, they got into a boat, that night they caught nothing. Just as day was breaking, Jesus stood on the shore. Check this out. It says the disciples didn't know that it was Jesus. And Jesus said to them, "Children, do you have any fish?" And they answered him, "No." He said to them, "Cast the net on the right side of the boat, and you will find some." So they cast it, and they were not able to haul it in because of the quantity of fish. The disciple whom Jesus loved therefore said to Peter, "It's the Lord." And when Simon Peter heard that it was the Lord, he put on his outer garment, for he was stripped for work. He threw himself into the sea. The other disciples came in the boat, dragging the net full of fish, for there was not far from land, about 100 yards off. When they got out of land, they saw a charcoal fire in place, with fish laid on it and bread. And Jesus said to him, "Bring some of the fish that you have caught." So Simon Peter went and aboard, and he hauled the net ashore full of the large fish, 153 of them. And although there was so many, the net was not torn. And Jesus said to him, "Come, have breakfast." Now none of the disciples dared ask him, "Who are you?" They knew it was the Lord. And Jesus came, he took the bread, he gave it to them, and so with the fish. This is now the 3rd time that Jesus was revealed to the disciples after he was raised from the dead. Father, I pray for your word to penetrate our hearts today. I'm humbled to speak in a group on a stage like this, where your word goes forth each week. May you grab hold of us. May you help us. May you write some new chapters in all of our stories. Father, the word says faith comes by hearing, hearing by the word of Christ. Let your word penetrate our hearts now. If you believe that, just give me a huge amen. Amen. Okay, so if you're a note taker, go ahead and write down chapter 1. I'm going to give you 5 chapters of every story. So this is true for you, it's true for me, it's true for everyone. Say to the next person next to you, just say, "It's true for you." It's true. And so the first thing is this, that Jesus, he meets us. And so that's what he does. And Jesus meets me in my need. That's what he does. He meets us right in the midst of our needs. And that's what we see here with these 7 disciples. 5 of them are named, 2 of them aren't. What we know about the ones that are named, specifically Peter, which will resonate to this group here on this island, is that he was a fisherman. I know nothing about fishing. Pastor Al knows nothing. He admitted it to me. I eat some good fish, though. I had some fish there. They served it. I had it at this beautiful place that Al took us on Friday night, and it had all the bones, and it had the head, and They don't serve fish like that in Chicago. But I ate all of it. And I took the head and I put it in Jody's plate and I went like this because I'm too immature not to do stuff like that. But seriously, they were professional fishermen. I mean, these guys were on the cover of Field and Stream. These guys, they had their own cable fishing channel. Do you hear what I'm saying? They were like, hey, we know how to cast this line and go over here and you go here to catch this and this is the type of fish you get over here. But look at the end of verse 6, because that reveals to us they were out all night. Verse 3, and there's 6 words, but that night they caught nothing. They caught nothing. They caught no fish. They were out all night and they had caught nothing. And so that's an interesting truth that they needed Jesus. They didn't recognize him, but they needed him. And so this is the issue that we see in the text first and foremost, is the first chapter is Jesus meets my need. We all have needs. And they left, remember, this is probably 8 to 10 days, maybe 2 weeks after the resurrection. And so what had happened is that they thought Jesus left them. So they wound up going to what they knew. They knew fishing. They went back to what they knew to do because they were confused, because they didn't know, because they weren't sure. And so they went back in the midst of their difficulty. Let me put this on the screen. I hope we have it. Here's 7 things that we have that show our difficulty. These, if we put up the next slide, these are the 7 Ds of difficulty that we all face in some way or another. And these guys were facing them too. They were facing discouragement because Jesus had been with them for 3 years and now suddenly he was gone. They were suffering from disillusionment. Hey, I thought we were going to change the world. I thought you were coming to be king. Like, what's going on now? They were suffering from dejection and defeat. It's like, whoa, hey, we're out all night and we caught nothing. Was it disaster? I think it was disastrous, what they had been through him for the last 3 years and what they watched happen. I don't know if it was disease, but Jesus certainly cured the disease and he was gone. They're just in the boat. Are you saying they returned to what they knew? Right. That's what we do when we're going through 7 Ds of difficulty. We just go back to the same old, same old. We choose the known for the unknown. Amen? And that's what we see. And they certainly were struggling with the difficulty of death as they had watched their Lord. And they had watched the one who led them. And so these are the 7 Ds of difficulty that all of us struggle with. Am I the only one? No. That's what we have. But Jesus, he meets us in the midst of our need. Even when we don't know it. Do you see that in the text? They didn't know it and he was there. So what's the need that you're in the midst of? Jesus not only wants to meet you, this text is telling us that he's right there. Sometimes we don't even recognize it. I remember when my mom was dying of cancer. And cancer, if you've had it and had victory, if you have a loved one that has lost the battle, it's treacherous. There's nothing like it. It's overwhelming. It just keeps going. And I remember when she was lying in bed and this was coming to the end, and she started telling me about the story of her mom when she was dying. And I'm just like, Mom, why are you saying this? And so she said about her mom, she said, I remember when she was dying. Remember, my mom's dying. And she said, and she had her hand up. She actually had her right hand up. And she asked her mom, she said, Mom, why is your hand up? And her mom said to her, because Jesus is holding my hand. Think about that for a moment. Because Jesus is holding my hand. And then my mom put her hand up and she said, Jesus is holding my hand. Jesus wants to hold your hand in the midst of your deepest fear, deepest struggle, deepest need, deepest difficulty, all those things. Do you believe me? Yes. The psalmist writes in And it's a great psalm, Psalm 34. He says, I'll worship him. I'll worship him at all times, in the midst of the difficult times, in the midst of the good times. The psalmist goes on to say, for the Lord is near to the brokenhearted. Is your heart broken? The Lord's near. That's the first chapter in all of our stories, that Jesus meets me in my need. Chapter 2, are we ready? Yeah. 2 people are ready over here. I'm not sure about these sections. Concerned about this right here. My friends from Australia, I'm concerned about you. Are we ready? Ready is this. The second chapter is this. Check this out. Because Jesus not only meets me in my need, Jesus helps me when I'm struggling. And so when I'm in the midst of my struggle is when he's there. And so I've already kind of tipped my hat to this, because they were professional fishermen. They were out all night. I gave you the 6 words. I want to emphasize them again. But what? They were out all night, but the text says, but that night they caught nothing. I mean, 0. And there was nothing that they had caught. There was nothing that they'd done. And so what happens next? Well, Jesus is on the shore, and Jesus calls out to them. And notice, they don't know who it is, and he says, children, do you have any fish? And so that's the first thing we see, is that we're a child when it comes to the Lord, aren't we? Yeah. We're his children. That's who we are. And then they say no. And then I love this. He says what? Cast the net on the other side of the boat. Cast it on the right side. And there you're going to find some. And so now what could they have done? They could have said, hey, you, we know what we're doing, okay? I don't know if you saw our cable channel or not, but we kind of know what's happening here. They didn't do that. They could have just ignored him, right? Who's this guy think he is? Look at this guy. He looks like a hippie. I'm telling you, who is that guy? Long hair, crazy guy. What? They didn't say any of that. And the interesting thing and the key to the whole text is they did what he said, even when they didn't recognize it was him. But something inside them, there was some truth there that they recognized, and they did it. So they cast the net, and the end of the verses say, because we're a Bible church, amen? And look what it says. It says they had a great quantity of fish, so much so that they couldn't haul it in. I firmly believe this may be the most important thing I say today. I firmly believe that some of us, now check that, many of us, we are one cast away from the greatest catch in our life. Do you believe me? That we're one okay, we got to learn something from Chicago here. I'm from Chicago, came in here. We don't do any golf clapping. If you're going to clap for me, no golf clap. You go all out, okay? So I'm going to give you another chance. I'm going to give you one more chance at that. No golf clapping in here. There's no golfers on this island. Come on. But stop it. We're not clapping for me. We're clapping for the truth that I think that if you had the courage, if you had the faith to take that cast, if you responded in obedience to what the Lord said and did what he wants, his desire is to bring a blessing upon blessing. That's what his text is teaching us. All we need to do is do what he said. That's what he's asking of us. So that couple that's praying and asking God for something, what's the step that he revealed to you? That single adult who's living a pure life and doing what the Lord wants. He's going to give blessing. See, obedience brings blessing, and disobedience brings disaster. Did you hear me? Yeah. Obedience brings blessing. Disobedience, it brings disaster. And so Jody and I, these are the nets that we've continued to drop. Are you getting the illustration? Yeah. So there's some things that we're going to drop. So what are the nets that each one of us needs to drop? Well, I'm going to put them on the screen. The first one is this. 5 nets we need to drop. The first one is the net of surrender. And so that's Jesus said of himself in Luke chapter 9. He said, whoever wants to be my disciple must do what? Deny himself. and take up their cross daily and follow me. Some of us were not pulling in the blessing that God wants because we haven't surrendered the entirety of our life. We're white-knuckling some aspects of our life. And we're afraid to let go. And the net of surrender is that I'm going all in when it says, Jesus says to. And I love this verse because it says, take up your cross daily. This is a daily decision that I'm going to surrender myself when my head gets off the pillow, my knees need to hit the floor. I need to surrender myself today to what Jesus wants. Next net to drop, how about this? We'll go through these quickly. The net of sacrifice. And so that's what comes next. Matthew chapter 19. Jesus says, everyone who's left houses or brothers or sisters or father or mother or children or lands for my name's sake will receive 100-fold and will inherit eternal life. Now, what's interesting about these two verses that we've looked at, pastors, we're not supposed to say and ask the question, hey, what's in it for me? You, as a follower of Christ, it's like it doesn't feel right to ask, hey, what's in it for me? I'm going to surrender everything. I'm going to sacrifice. What's in it? But isn't it interesting that although we think we shouldn't ask that question, the Bible answers it. And that's what an answer is. And so I got to be honest, Matthew chapter 19, verse 29 is circled in my Bible because maybe my faith isn't as strong as yours. But I go back to it because I want to surrender and I want to sacrifice. And there's some things that Jody and I have sacrificed to be in ministry, to be followers of Christ. There's some things that Pastor Al and Debbie have sacrificed to be in ministry, to be followers of Christ. Just taking the step of faith and leaping off to start this church. Amen? If we could hear from the pastor, and I mean that with all sincerity, what a privilege to have your dad serving in an elder in a ministry, in a role in the church. I mean, I would just, it's just awesome. I mean, some of you know Jody and I became a Christian at 27 and didn't have this plan to go into ministry and, was in the business world and all that. And my dad never heard me preach. So to be able to be preaching to your dad, and then your dad come up after the message and say, Pastor Al, please. Son, just please. I'm kidding. He's the most biggest encourager. Come on, let's praise the Lord. But it's not just about the pastors and the pastor's wife. It's for you when you drop that net of sacrifice and you take a step of faith for the Lord and you follow him in whatever business venture he has you going after. Whatever kind of opportunity, maybe it's to go back to school, maybe it's to start a new job, maybe whatever it is. Maybe it's giving of your time and your talents and your treasure to the church. Repeat after me, it's worth it. It is. That's what this verse is saying. Another net to drop, the net of selflessness. And here we see it again. What's in it for me? Well, I'll tell you what's in it for you. If you seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, not your own, all these things will be added to you. What things? Well, Matthew chapter 6 talks about what's essential, what you need, not necessarily what you want. It's about significance versus success. It's about peace and the prosperity of your heart and your soul. Hey, let me give you another net. Net of selflessness. We'll go to the next one, the net of solitude. And so this is the key to getting these. Let's look at Jesus as our example. It says he went off to the mountain by himself to pray. And when it was evening, he was alone. Hey, that wasn't the first time he did it. I think that I'm not alone. And I think that even though I'm in St. Vincent, I think that we have trouble with this one. This whole solitude thing. The United States, St. Vincent, everywhere in the world, I think we're just distracted. And we don't know what this discipline of solitude is. How come? Hold on, let me check my phone. I got to check. You're driving. Not only are you driving on the wrong side of the road, you're driving up checking your messages too. But seriously, like it's not. This is just distracting us. And I don't mean that as a judgment. It happens to me. I don't think we know enough about solitude. Pastor Al, that'd probably be a good message. Solitude. Just what does it look like to shut everything off? And to hear from the Lord. And so let me give you another net. The last net is this, the net of servanthood. And Jody and I had the privilege of being here yesterday with many of the servants who make this church go. And we spoke to them yesterday, some of the leaders of the church. And it was such a privilege to spend time with you. I know some of you couldn't be here, but that's the ability to serve. And so you got a group of people here who want to serve each other. And so what a great opportunity for you to serve. Why do we serve? Well, Jesus said he didn't come to be served, but to serve. So let's put these nets up for a moment. Let's take a second, and I love that about the church. Let's apply it. Which one do you need to drop? Which one needs to go down? I mean, because remember, there's a quantity of blessing, i.e. fish, that Jesus wants to bring. And so what do you need to cast? Third chapter, let's keep going. Third chapter of this in what we're calling our resurrection stories is Jesus accepts me as I am. Isn't that a great truth? He doesn't expect me to be someone else. He doesn't expect me to get all cleaned up. He doesn't expect me to be perfect. No, he takes me as I am. And so that's what we see next in the story. And so let me draw your attention to the next group of verses. And what's interesting about this is that John recognizes that it's Jesus. And so he's the first one in verse 7. It says, the disciple whom Jesus loved said, it's the Lord. And so let's just stop for a moment on that. So the disciple whom Jesus loved, John, that's him. He's the writer of the gospel. And you may not realize this, but he never identifies himself as a writer. He only says the one that Jesus loved. And that's how we know it's him. Why does he do that? He's humble, right? It's the one that Jesus loved. He's a humble guy. Just think with me for a moment. If you think about, put your thinking caps on for a moment. Is he? How humble it is to say the one that Jesus loves, as opposed to all you who he doesn't. Now I'm kidding. I'm joking, but John recognized at first that it was him, and then Peter, Simon Peter, as soon as he figures it out, he breaks the record for the 100-yard swim because he dives in and he just goes after it, man. Now, again, put your thinking caps on. Why did he do it? Why was he the only one out of the 7 in the boat who jumped in to get to Jesus? Could it have been because of what he had done and his denial of Jesus? I think it could have been. I mean, if you keep reading, and we won't read it now, but if you read verses 15 through 19, Jesus goes through this thing where he makes breakfast for him, and then he pulls Peter aside, and then he asks him 3 times, do you love me? Do you love me? Do you love me? And he says, tend my sheep, feed my lambs. And he's reinstating him in some way, even though what he did. And I don't know, anybody know maybe in this section, why do you think he asked 3 times? Yeah, he denied him 3 times. And so I think that's probably it. That caused him to jump in, his failure in his mind, and how he failed the Lord, but he didn't run away from him, he ran to him. Yes. Isn't that the truth? In the midst of his failure, in the midst of his insignificance, in the midst of his guilt and shame, you run to him because he accepts you as you are. Now, interestingly, Luke chapter 5, this isn't the first time that Jesus was unidentified on the shore and he told Peter and the rest of the disciples to cast the net on the other side. There's actually another story in Luke chapter 5. It's not the same story. It's a different story. And if you read that story and look at the synopsis of the Gospels, you'll see that that was another time that Peter, he left Jesus, and Jesus came running after him. And so it's a deja vu moment. Have you ever had one of those? Where it's like deja vu. Oh, he finally, oh my goodness, it's Jesus. And here he's telling me to do it again. And that time he blessed him, and this time he's going to bless him too. Aren't we thankful, all of us, that Jesus accepts us as we are? Amen. Pastor Al mentioned, Jody and I, last time we were here, we did a marriage conference, and it was awesome. And so some of you know that we came to faith through a marriage breakdown. And so Jody was going to divorce me. And there was some things that I was doing that I shouldn't have been doing. And she would say there was some things that she wasn't doing that she could have been doing. But it would have been easy for us just to get a divorce. And we walked into a pastor's office, and we both became Christians in the same time, at the same prayer, at the same moment. And the Lord has been moving ever since. But we tell our story a lot, and Moody Publishing said, well, let's put it in a book. And if you get that book and you open it up to page 42, that's the worst moment of my life. That's my worst sin. That's my darkest nightmare. Page 42, that's what led her to wanting to divorce me, and us to go into a pastor's office, and us to get saved. Why? Because Jesus accepts me as I am. No matter the deepest, darkest sin, no matter what you think it is unworthy, and he won't, yes, he will. And he gives us a fresh start, a new lease on life. Am I speaking truth today? He gives us the new lease on life. That's what Jesus does. And so I wonder, I think each and every one of you has a page 42. Do you know what I'm talking about? You got a page 42. I don't know if you've put it in a place where other people can see it, but you got it. And the deepest and the darkest and the difficulty. And I'm just here to tell you that, man, chapter 3 of all of our stories, everybody's got a page 42. Are they willing to share it? I don't know. I'll leave that between you and the Lord. But Jesus accepts us. That's chapter 3 of every resurrection story. 2 more chapters. Good stuff so far? Yes. Chapter 4 is this. We'll put it up on the board. Note takers. Jesus loves to spend time with me. He just loves it. He loves to be with you. I mean, I don't know. Your friend may not want to hang out with you that much. They might be like, nah, I'm busy. Hey, you know what? You even may be with your friend, and after it's been a long day, you're like, let's just, come on, man. I just got to go. Maybe your spouse is saying, I've had enough of you. Let's just get out of here for a little bit. Joking. But we all need a little break, right? Jody said to me yesterday, she said, you're just around too much. Just go take a walk on the beach or something. No, she didn't say that. She was thinking it, though. I could definitely tell. But Jesus, hey, he's there, man. And he loves to spend time with you. Now, this is an interesting part of the story, because what happens is they come and they have breakfast. And so Jesus has the fish on the grill already. And then he says, give me some of the fish that you caught. Yeah, they did it. But isn't it interesting that they did haul it in? And so the details matter. Jesus told them to bring what they had, and he brought something to it, right? And we all bring together what we have. And so the meal, the breakfast, always in Scripture, it's a sign of the fellowship that God wants to have with you. So anytime you see a meal like this, it's just God wants to spend time with you. That's the symbolism. That's the picture. It's the time that he wants with you. That's the meal. Jesus said in Revelation chapter 3, he says, anyone who does what? Who knocks at the door, right? And he'll do what? He'll open the door. He'll hear him. He'll open the door. And he'll invite him in to do what? It says, to dine with me. You with me and I with you. And it's a picture of the fellowship that the creator of the universe, the one who breathed life into you, wants to have with you on a daily basis. That's chapter 4. He loves spending time with you, his children. And so it's a picture of fellowship. And so the fish that they represent. It's an interesting picture. Now, let me handle this 153. So it says that there was 153 fish. Now, it's interesting because it identifies it, and details matter in the scriptures. But if you do your research, and I was on the plane, I'm like, I got to figure out, what does this 153 mean? So I'm looking this up and reading a lot. There's been a lot that's been written on this number 153. Some people say it's a triangular number. And so they say 153, those digits. I don't know, any mathematicians in here? I read it. I don't understand what they're talking about. But they said it's a triangular number. And then look at the mathematicians over here trying to tell them what it is. You just keep it to yourself. And then some people say it's the number of species of fish. So I'm on the plane. I said to Jody, okay, let's start counting. I got to 1, I got to 3, I got to 5. I don't know, that was it. And then others would say, no, it's got other significance. That if you look in the Old Testament, you'll see it has to do with the number of workers in the Old Testament that built the temple. That's what they say. You know what I say? That's a lot of fish. 153 is a lot of fish. And I'm just telling you, it's overwhelming. It's more than you need. Any track stars in here? Do you know what a PB is? Personal best. And so Jesus not only gives you more than you need, he gives you your personal best. That's what he does. He gave Peter his personal best. He wants to give you your personal best. He wants to meet us where we are. Let me give you a quote. I think we have it. We'll put it up on the screen. Do we have a quote from a book that I don't recommend a lot of books, only the classics. This is a small little book that I've read over and over again, and it's about fellowshipping with God. It's from Brother Lawrence. He says this: let us occupy ourselves entirely in knowing God. That's what he wants. That we would occupy ourselves entirely, put it down. And the more we know him, the more we will desire to know him. As love increases with knowledge, the more we know God, the more we will truly love him. We will learn to love him equally in times of distress or in times of great joy. And then he goes on to say, well, how come? Well, this is why. Because all things are possible to him who believes, that they are less difficult to him who hopes. They are more easy to him or her who loves, and still more easy to him or her who perseveres in the practice of these 3 virtues: belief, hope, and love. We get them from our fellowship with God. Last chapter in our resurrection story, last chapter in your resurrection story, it's common to all of us. And this is the chapter that it just keeps going and going and going. Jesus pursues me over and over again. Can I just speak that truth over you today? That Jesus is pursuing you. No matter what you did, no matter what's going on, over and over again. He doesn't get sick of it. He's not tired of it. Jesus pursues you. Now, we can say that, and pastors can say that, and you can say amen, but how do we know it? Well, let's look at the text, because it's here. I mean, look at verse 14, because this is the significance of what we're talking about today. This was the 3rd time that Jesus revealed himself to the disciples. The first time was on the first Easter. The second time was about 8 days. It says in the text, 8 days later. You can see it in John chapter 20. This is the 3rd time. This is like 10, 12, maybe 2 weeks after. He keeps coming after us, man. The resurrected Christ wants to resurrect you, and he will do nothing to stop pursuing after those he loves. That's the scripture. That's the truth. That's what's true in all of our stories, that he's coming after you. And so I got on a plane. Jody and I, we were in Miami for a bit, for a conference. And we're Pastor Al, we're coming over to see you. We jumped all the way over here to tell you this. Jesus is coming after you, man. He's coming after you. And he's not disappointed in you. Oh, you may be discouraged. But he loves you as you are. And he wants to resurrect you in the midst of your difficulty, in the midst of your pain, in the midst of the burdens that we have here on this island and the difficulty that we face. Jesus, he's available. And he's in pursuit of those he loves. Even when we're disobedient, even when we fail to do what he wants, Jesus comes after us. Anybody remember the story of Jonah? I mean, he came after him, even when we're running away. So I'll end with this. Here's the chapters. These are the chapters. We'll just sum these up. If we could put the chapters up on the screen. It's the final slide. Jesus, he helps me in my need. He helps me when I'm struggling. You can see for him for yourself. Just let him sink in for a moment. And let me just ask you this. What chapter are you in? Which one are you in right now? Or how about this? Which one do you need to share with somebody to be an encouragement to them? Or maybe you say, I don't know if I'm in any of these chapters. Hey, are you kidding me? You can have this story. Amen? Today is the day of salvation. The reason you're here and that thing that you're feeling, that's the Holy Spirit of God that's pursuing you, that wants you to become part of the family. Jesus' family. So what story are you in? What chapter specifically? How about we do this at the end of our time together? We're going to take an offering in a moment. I'm going to pray and we're going to sing again. But how about instead of just, running out the door? How about if we up the level of spiritual conversation and not just say, oh, where are you heading for lunch? Or what are you going to do this afternoon? Instead of that, why don't we just, what if we would share a chapter in our resurrection story? What if we would just answer the question and then we would give permission, Pastor Al gives the permission, that you'd say, hey, what chapter are you in? And you'd say, well, I'm just feeling that Jesus accepts me as I am. Or maybe you would ask somebody for permission. Hey, do you mind if I tell you my resurrection story? And just up the level of spiritual conversation. Anybody with me on here? And what if we would just do that? And now listen, if you say, somebody says to you, yeah, go ahead. Yeah, sure, you ask them. Ask first. Can I share my story briefly? And then they say, yeah, go ahead. And if they start looking at their watch a little bit, or if they start rolling their eyes, can you land the plane and cut to the chase? But seriously, let's just, how can we share our stories in a more meaningful way? Because I believe God uses our story to bring us closer to him. And he wants to use each of yours. And so if you were to ask me, if you come up to Jody and you say, well, what's going on? What chapter are you in? Man, we're in a chapter of blessing. And our resurrection story, man, he's doing things we can't even fathom. And so I got a picture. This is the picture. Al said it already, but can we put the picture up? This is our new grandbaby. So we're in a season of blessing. So our daughter Erin, she had a baby, her first child, and it was on Good Friday of all things. And so Jody left, and she flew the next day, flew directly to Pennsylvania, and so she spent time with her there, and then I wound up flying out right after Easter. And so it's amazing. What we're seeing, and so our story is that, man, the resurrected Christ resurrected us, and he's blessed us and blessed us and blessed us. And I'm sure that's part of your story too. That's his desire. And that's what he wants to do.